It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Appreciate you listening. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So in this last hour, it's my last hour. Gary and Eric will be returning next Sunday night, Monday morning. Earlier in the program, I'd made a comment about how when you are the age of 4, that you don't really know what you want to be. And a lady called up, and she said her son at the age of 4 wanted to be a firefighter. And he actually did grow up to be a firefighter. So in addition to the usual stuff that we're doing, I also, in this final hour heading into a Friday, I want to know if you were somebody who, when you were 4, 5, 6 years old and you wanted to be a doctor, you wanted to be a lawyer, you wanted to be whatever, did you actually grow up to be what you wanted to be? And I'll take your calls on everything else as well. 866-90-RED-EYE. Really quickly, then I'm going to get to some of your calls. We mentioned earlier in the program that the Georgia school shooter, Colt Gray, his father has now been arrested, as we've been mentioning all night. The father of Colt Gray, he decided that it would be a good idea after the FBI came to him and said, it looks like your son may have been threatening schools. You might want to keep the guns away. And the father said that he would. His father actually decided it would be a good idea to buy Colt a gun for Christmas. It is the same gun that he used to kill 4 people. Well, now we're finding out. So obviously not the greatest parental decisions. We're finding out more and more about the absolute train wreck that Colt Gray's family is. I mean, you're talking about a lot of dysfunction. The Daily Mail has it in some detail. I'm not going to go too deep here because, as I said earlier, we've all got stuff. Colt Gray, they say, was given the gun he used to shoot dead 4 people at his Georgia high school as a Christmas present from his father months after they were questioned by the FBI over alleged threats. The 14-year-old was arrested on Wednesday. And by the way, when they arrested him, he had 3 words. I did it. And then he just kept on talking. And he kept on talking. And I think part of what is going on is the fact that he does have a very dysfunctional family. They talk about his mother and how his mother, she had warrants out across 4 counties in Georgia, and the fact that his mother is currently in jail. There's drugs, there's spousal abuse. I mean, there's just a lot there. As a matter of fact, the mother is not allowed to contact the father unless there is a third party sort of mediator, if you will. So you've got dysfunction on both sides. Colin's mom, warrants out, in jail, and obviously the father, not the best parental decision to buy his son a gun months after the FBI said you might want to keep the guns at bay. So he had a lot of issues. But I'm going to say this, is that we've all got issues. We all have, well, not all of us, but I mean, a lot of us have issues with parents, with growing up. We all just have stuff. And it sounds like he got the short end of the stick when it comes to parenting. A lot of other people have too. They didn't make the decision that he did, which was go into a school and kill 4 people. And I've always said, because you hear people do this, you see people do this, and you think, okay, so you have a rough life. So how is it going to make it better to kill 4 other people, to go and kill other people? How does that make your life any better? It doesn't make your life any better. It makes your life worse, and it makes everybody else's life worse too, that are impacted by your crime. You got 4 people whose lives are now lost, and you've got families that no longer have their loved ones. I mean, obviously, this guy was angry. Obviously, he was angry at his parents. He was angry at the world, and he just has a lot going on. And there's a lot of dysfunction in the house. And that's really sad. But what is even sadder is that he fueled that anger, and he used that anger, and instead of trying to improve himself, which is what I would hope most people would try to do and improve their lot in life, he decided to not only destroy his life, but he destroyed the lives of many other people. Killed 4. All of those family members are impacted. You had all those other people that were injured as well. So we'll have to see where it goes, but you look at the rap sheet of his mother and his father's decisions, and it's still no excuse for what he did. And I sincerely hope that nobody does try to make excuses. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. I'm going to get through a lot of your calls right now. Bill is in San Antonio. Bill, go ahead. Thanks for calling in.
How you doing this evening, Dan?
I'm good.
I want to circle back to what you were talking about with Kamala Harris and the wall and her views on the wall and flip-flopping there.
Yep.
If you think about it, and I think maybe mentioned this on several times in the past, most communist countries have walls that keep the people into the countries, and maybe she changed her mind after she took on Tim Walz as a running mate. Of course, he's been over to China 30 times, I think, what they've been saying.
Yep.
So, if they're talking about turning this country into a socialist, communist, Marxist country, they may be wanting to try to keep us by building the wall and keep all the citizens in the United States and keep us from leaving. Because a bunch of us will probably want to leave after that.
Yeah, you know what, Bill? It actually makes a lot of sense. Let's see here. All right, so David is in Maryland, and David, you're one of those few, it would appear, that you knew what you wanted to be as a little kid, and you grew up to be what you wanted to be.
Yes, sir. I never got to be a career paid firefighter, but I was a volunteer, and I started in the color guard, which is something we had many years ago. The whole town was involved in the fire department, and I was carrying a flag in parades, and we wore fire department T-shirts and such like that. And I started out with Hillside Volunteer Fire Department in Hillside, Maryland at the age of 6 years old in 1966. And I stayed with them off and on up until they shut it down in 2001. I was trying to be good to firefighters. Prince George's County was shutting down firehouses.
Interesting. So why? So was there?
That's part of a Democrat. PG County is run by Democrats even now. The fire chief of the county is a black female who has never been on a fire call in her life. She's all EMS, has no clue about suppression firefighting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's rough, David, but I appreciate your call. I got to tell you, you hear more and more of that these days, don't you? And I don't know what the firefighter protocol is, but you do see that a lot in various industries these days, where you have people that are in charge, but they've never actually done the job. You know what I mean? Like in that case, guy said that the current fire chief or whatever it is, she's never actually been on the front lines. And I've always wondered, why is that? Why would you not have a actual firefighter that is in charge of, the town's firefighting force? I've never really understood that, because you hear that from time to time. You hear it a lot more these days because of DEI and the rest of that nonsense. But I'm just telling you, I've always found that interesting. Casey is in Tennessee on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Casey.
Good morning, Dan.
Morning. Go ahead.
I just wanted to call in. You wanted to know about the people's aspirations when they were kids. I really wanted to be a train engineer. I feel like I got close. I'm driving a big truck.
Okay.
That's
well,
about
now,
as close as I get. I got a big horn.
There you go. We love those. Casey, you know that horn honking has a big history on WTN. So I love that you just did that in Tennessee, which is my hometown station. Let me ask you though, real quick, Casey. Let me ask you real quick. How come you didn't actually learn how to drive trains?
My path just didn't go that way.
Yeah.
I just wound up, and I kind of trucker jargon, but I sort of backed my way into trucking.
Oh, okay, yeah. Listen, I know that people might be shocked to hear this. I fell into radio at 17 years old, and I never looked back. It's kind of funny because even up until the age of about 31, I was still thinking, okay, so when radio work does not work out, what's my backup going to be? It really wasn't until the last 20 years or so that I realized, okay, I think I've been in radio long enough that I can say that it is actually going to be my career. And Casey, I do appreciate your call. This is Marlene in New York on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Marlene.
Hi, this is Marlene in Endicott, New York, and I've been a Democrat. I was since 1981. And I'll be 61 in October, and I switched to Republican June 4th after the verdict came out. But thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So what I wanted to say, a couple slogans for Trump. I'm kind of off topic, but the Dems are just so hypocritical. They clamor with pro-choice. But when you take away the freedom of voice, there really is no choice in the matter, or even vice versa. You take away somebody's choice to choose, then where's your voice? You have nothing. So
I
no
like
voice,
that.
No choice. Yeah, and the other one is a vote for the Democrat ticket is a vote to crash and burn with a K. K for Kamala, crash the economy, and Waltz just burns down cities. So I hope Trump and Vance, God bless them, I hope they feel free to use one of those slogans, no voice, no choice, or crash and burn with a K.
You know what? I love it, Marlene. That's great, and I appreciate the call, and I'm sure that they're listening. Brian is in Jacksonville, Florida, on Red Eye Radio. Brian, how are you?
Oh, thank you. Good morning there, Mr. Mandis. Anyway, I've really enjoyed your show. Earlier, you were asking about people who got to do what they wanted to do. I came from a real practical family. Everyone was working. They were all trade schoolers. And I, too, started doing apartment maintenance later. But as a little kid, my father, who was the black sheep of the family at that time, took me to a music concert. I guess this was in 1969 or 70, and I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I saw everybody playing music and singing and dancing. And I knew that I wanted to participate in that kind of stuff. So from an early age, I started reading about music. Then I started learning to play it. And then when I actually got my first job, I saved up to buy percussion instruments. And I kept working at it. And I did it for like 30 years, and I did attain my goal, and I did get to play at music festivals and
Nice.
get to meet some famous people, and I really enjoyed it, and I was super happy, but I wasn't a young guy by the end of it, and being a musician and touring and playing is very hard, and so I just retired. And I didn't ever totally quit my day job because I had the practicality of trade school maintenance type work. So I was able to retire happy, but I did get to enjoy my dream.
I love it.
That was what mattered the most to me.
Brian, let me ask you real quick, because I'm running out of time quickly. What was the band you saw that inspired you to be a musician?
It was Allman Brothers.
Okay, good Southern band. I love it.
Yeah, they were great. All right, have a great night, and I've loved listening to you this week.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it, and we'll return next. Dan Mandis here. This is Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920. USDA's new farm income forecast for this year has U.S. farmers as a whole making less money than last year. Spiro Stefano runs USDA's Economic Research Service. He told us
net cash farm income for 2024 is forecast at $154 billion, which is about a 7.2% drop from 2023.
crop producers being hit the hardest, with the value of their crop production expected to drop this year by over $25.5 billion. But on the livestock side,
animal receipts are going in the other direction. Animal receipts are forecast to increase about 4%.
added up, and Spiro Stefano says you have overall farm income this year, net farm income down from last year by 4%, down to $140 billion.
That's still above historical 20-year average.
This is Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE. That is where we find Fred calling from Chattanooga, Tennessee on Red Eye Radio. Fred, how are you?
Doing good, Dan. I just want to say I've always wanted to be a truck driver ever since I was a little boy. My dad used to say it didn't matter what the truck looked like going down the road. If it was the biggest piece of junk, I was as happy as can be just to see a truck going down the road. And also, my grandfather was a welder. I got to be a welder, so I've got to live out both of my career dreams.
What was it, let me ask you, Fred, what was it about a truck when you were young that made you want to be a truck driver? Was it just the power of the truck, the vision of the truck, the sound of the truck?
I would have to say the sound. I grew up in West Virginia, so I used to hear the coal trucks all the time, and that hearing that Jake brake just, that's really what done it for me there.
Any regrets? Are you still trucking?
Still trucking. I'm heading up above Knoxville today.
All right, man. Well, have fun, and thank you very much for sharing your story. It's very relatable to a lot of folks. Rick is in Knoxville on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Dan. It's nice talking to you again. I've talked to you before. I got to fulfill my whole dream of electronics, radio, TV. I was a tap dancer that my mom had me in tap dancing, and so I appeared on the Jerry Lewis telethons whenever I was just like 6 years old. So, I was the whole TV thing just blew me away, okay? But I was more into the electronics of the stuff, and so I was just like 6 years old still. I actually made me 7, and I repaired my aunt's radio, and so the whole engineering side of the thing bloomed in me. And about 10 years old, I was lucky enough to work in the recording studio where Bobby Helms recorded Jingle Bell Rock.
No kidding.
I strung microphone cables and helped the engineers set up the recording equipment, etc. All at the age of 10. Okay.
I got a question for you. So that sounds incredible. Okay. I will tell you though, I as well am a tap dancing school survivor. That my mom sent me to tap dancing lessons. My listeners in Nashville, this will come as no shock to them. My mom sent me to tap dancing school when I was very young, and I got to tell you that I was terrible, and I found out at a very young age that I had no rhythm and no ability to tap dance whatsoever. We're out of time, but I was going to ask Rick, does he ever get the temptation to strap on a pair of tap shoes? We'll return next.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is indeed the phone number, and Paul is in Texas on Red Eye Radio. Paul, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
I'm going to tie in real quick how I became a truck driver and a Republican coming up black in South Texas. When I was about a year and a half old, I was riding in the back of my mom's station wagon. She hears a truck horn, turns around. I'm hanging out of the car trying to touch a Peterbilt going by. We go from that to my grandmother, me having a fit if she didn't let me watch the trucks warm up to the guy on down the street, to my dad being pissed off when we were on vacation because I knew every truck on the road but didn't know what the Grand Canyon was, to me going to college, supposedly going to law school, didn't want to do that. Long story short, sold my wife's car, borrowed $3,000, bought a 76 cab over with no power steering, back half of the transmission out, no air conditioning, didn't even have a license, drove it for 3 months, went and took my license, had a friend lie for me, said I had experience, and started hauling 40,000-pound granite blocks on flatbed trailers that guys that had been hauling for 20 years would flip over. In the midst of this, I was listening to shows like this, and somebody asked me about Rush Limbaugh, and I was riding in the truck all the time, and they kept telling me the guy was racist. I wound up listening to Rush Limbaugh, listened to him for 20, 25 years, never heard him say anything racist. Called him one day, and he gifted me this iPhone I'm calling you on right now.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. He gave me an iPhone 10.
Rush Limbaugh gave you an iPhone?
Rush Limbaugh gave me an iPhone 10 because I told him the story of how I became Republican. When I was 16 and Jimmy Carter was running, everybody in my community had it in my head that we were going back to slavery. So when Reagan ran the next time and it didn't happen and my dad was making more money, I was like, something ain't right. And then they were telling me this guy, Rush Limbaugh, was so racist later on. So I said, well, let me listen to him, see what he's got to say. I listened to him for 30 years, never heard him say anything racist, and it kind of changed my views, and it kind of tied together what I had figured out when Reagan ran. So ever since then, I've been a staunch conservative. I'm not really a Republican. I don't trust all Republicans, but I am a conservative. And now I run a small fleet of about 15 trucks.
Man, good for you. That is a great American story and a great talk radio story. And boy, I share your affinity for Rush Limbaugh, and congratulations. You really have. It's like you have accomplished the American dream. We were talking about this earlier where, it feels like the American dream is kind of dead right now. But, I mean, you've accomplished it.
I was very lucky, and one thing I've learned along the way is it's not money that makes you happy. People are like, why didn't you become a lawyer? And I like being a lawyer, but I didn't want to put in the work to be a lawyer. I'm in a truck right now, 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been up most of the day working on trucks, had to take this run. So, but I just figured you'd get a kick out of that story. But, my mom kind of tried to keep me away from trucks once I almost got killed by one. But
that's funny.
It just didn't work. So.
Well, listen, that is a great story, and, man, I very much appreciate the call. That is very funny. Odine is calling from California on Red Eye Radio. Odine, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Go ahead, sir.
My dream was to escape the farm and be a rock star. So at the age of 25, I got out of the radio business in Minneapolis and singing with bands in Minneapolis and went out to see what would happen in Los Angeles. And 3 years later, ran into 4 guys. Actually, it was only 3 at the time. And they were in a band called Motley Crue. And so for 44 days, I was living the dream until the backer thought I would maybe break away and go solo. And so I was out. Vince was in. They made up the story and basically made me into a liar. And now,
hold on. So you sang with Motley Crue for 44 days?
Yeah, I started with them when they had no equipment, no gigs, no nothing, no cars. 44 days later, they had full-on backing with me, And the first album was recorded with me. No one's ever heard those recordings. And since I had never played out with them, they actually told me I was out of the band 10 days before the first Starwood gig. And by then I'd told everybody about Motley Crue and check us out. Everybody showed up, only to be told that I made the whole story up. And so basically I was persona non grata in the rock world, and now, you know, Rolling Stone's written about it. It's been in all the books and magazines, but
really,
you know, I'm 71. I'm 71 now.
Wow.
But I'm still singing better than ever. I sang with Andre Crouch for years in a black gospel choir and sang with a lot of other people. So I'm known, but, you know, I have no illusions and, being a rock star.
Let me ask you this, Odin. You have any regrets about about how that whole thing turned out?
Well, they ruined my life. You know, they made me into a liar. You know, and it's something that the truth didn't come out for 20 plus years. So I became a broker. And
okay, well, it's interesting. It's interesting, Odin, because I live in Nashville. So does Vince Neil, and I have this open invitation because I'm a big Motley Crue fan. I've asked Vince Neil to come on my show. McNamara also lives in Nashville, so I've always wanted to have those guys on. So if they ever come on, I'll ask them about you. And you said that Rolling Stone wrote about it. Can you send me a link? Can you send me a link to that story?
Vince never met me before he replaced me.
Yeah.
Mick, whose real name is Bob Deal, and Nikki, whose real name is Frank Ferrano, and Tommy Lee, whose real name is Tommy Bass. You know, they just they turncoated on me, and what happened was
I'll tell you. I'll tell you what. Send me I would love to read about your story. If you can send me my email address. Go ahead.
Pick up the dirt. Pick up Rolling Stone from early April, around April 1st of 2019. They wrote a review of the dirt, and it was a fact check. I checked it for the first time in about a year yesterday, and they pretty much wiped out everything about me. But if you Google my name, Odin Peterson, you'll see a lot of stuff. But you know, I haven't written my book. I doubt if I ever will. But you know,
well, you know, it sounds like you're not. It sounds like even though you had that incident that happened to you, you still were able to make something of yourself and make something of your life, and you didn't just, you know, live in the anger and the regret, and that is a good thing. And I wish you the best of luck, and thank you very much for calling in. Johnny is in Alabama on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Johnny, go ahead.
Dan, the man, what's up?
How are you?
I'm good. Back when I was a kid, I grew up. My dad was a truck driver. Both my grandfathers were truck drivers. And I always looked up to them. In 1989, I got my driver's license on my 19th birthday, and I'm still a truck driver today.
So let me ask you, Johnny, were you in Alabama, were you a big fan of the TV show BJ and the Bear?
Oh, yeah. I've seen that truck many a time when I run up to the Midwest.
All right, Johnny, thank you very much for calling in. I appreciate it. Okay, got one more story, then I'm going to get back to business. This is Sheena in Las Vegas on Red Eye Radio. Sheena, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? I just wanted to call in. I hear all the guys, truck drivers, and I think they're awesome. I really appreciate truck drivers and first responders. But when I was a kid, I always kind of knew what I wanted. I mean, I dabbled. I had other ideas. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a doctor. You know, I wanted to be a veterinarian. But what I really always wanted was to be a mommy. I wanted to have kids, raise them up right and, just be there for them. And now I have 4 grown children. My oldest is 44. My youngest is 34. And between those 4, I have 15 grandchildren. And my oldest granddaughter, who was 22 yesterday, will be having her first child, my first great-grandchild,
Wow.
in the first week of October.
Well, congratulations.
So
You've got to be very proud. You have.
I am. Yes, I did good. I did good, and they do good. Very little trouble from any of them growing up. They're all very wonderful, productive citizens.
Well, listen, I got to tell you that as a guy who watches society and has been talking about our world for a long time, I got to tell you that being a good parent and withstanding the challenges that parents face, especially today, sounds like your kids are older, but especially today, and trying to withstand the challenges of being a parent when you have all of this outside crap coming at your kids every single day, whether it is, the leftist media, all the stuff that's happening on social media, whether it is all the stuff that's happening, the indoctrination that's happening in some of the high schools and the colleges as well, to be able to raise up a kid as a, God-fearing and Bible-loving and America-loving adult, and a productive adult at that is, able to not only be a good person, be happy and all that kind of stuff. It is a huge challenge these days. And so, I don't envy anyone who has young kids. I have a 10-year-old stepchild, and he's awesome. We call him a bonus kid, of course. But there's a lot of challenges to being a parent today. So if you got good kids and you're a good parent, then you have accomplished a lot considering everything that is thrown again at your family these days here in 2024. All right, got a lot more straight ahead. It's Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. I was talking about this earlier. Somebody found me on the internet. They found my email address, actually. It's dan@997wtn.com. But he found me, and he sent me a note on this audio bite that I played earlier regarding Kamala Harris. And I had made mention that I do believe that it is their ultimate goal. It's the Democrats' ultimate goal to shut us down. And he asked me if I were to replay this audio bite that I played a few hours ago. This is Kamala Harris talking about extremism.
The Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms, because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community.
So that is Kamala Harris. And of course, complete lack of self-awareness, because, of course, we know that the Department of Justice has been going after Donald Trump for quite some time. And the Department of Justice, of course, at the asking, I believe, of Joe Biden. So she's threatening to go after those that are spreading disinformation online. And I find it interesting. Number one, I would like to know what exactly is extremism to her. Number two, if you want to look at disinformation, if you want to look at misinformation, all you have to do, Kamala Harris, is look at your own, the guy you work for and look at the administration that you work in, because you've got Karine Jean-Pierre, you've got Alejandro Mayorkas, you, Madam Vice President, and the rest of you have been doing nothing but lying to the American people for 3.5 years about any number of things. The biggest one, of course, that comes to mind is the border. But there have been a lot of others. But at least for me, the evening is over. I appreciate you listening. You can always find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. Also, if you would, follow me on Twitter as well, at Dan Mandis Show. Gary and Eric back on Sunday night, Monday morning on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.